So I would like to invite Professor Shamindra and Professor Robin, who will share with us the topic on generation of uncertainty and its effect on decision making by teenagers towards a luxury brand.
But before starting, we are feeling great because a lot of discussions happened yesterday in terms of millennials and senior people. And from that perspective, me and Robin both are the teenagers because it's great feeling that we are the teenagers because our respondents are teenagers. So basically, we are from Institute of Engineering and Management, Calcutta, India. So let's all start with this one. Before I start our typical presentation of our research work, let me tell you something about the luxury scenario in India. If you consider the case of Louis Vuitton had a very old relationships with India, going back to the golden era of the Maharajas of India. Maybe during the colonial era, maybe during the pre-colonial era, all these things are there. But Maharajas could afford it, not the local people of India. So in the last 15 to 20 years, the scenario has been changed rapidly. And the common people, they can afford, but they are affording luxury brands. And as per the recent data given by the Associated of Chambers of Commerce and Industries of India, we call them ASSOCHAM, that by the end of this year, India will reach to the extent of $30 billion in terms of the total luxury market. Of course, it's much smaller than the Chinese market, but really it's emerging. Maybe within the next 2020-2021, it will be around 45 to 50 billion US dollar market altogether. The initiation of this particular research work started with a very funny situation. It's very disturbing as well. Like one of the neighbors of Rabin, in his locality, one child of standard 10, so the age of the child is around 14 to 15 years. After passing a public examination, he demanded a Rado watch from his father. His father is a big businessman, as an entrepreneur in Calcutta city, and the price of that particular wristwatch was around $2,000, $3,000, something like that. Just try to imagine a standard 10 student. He wants a Rado wristwatch from his father at the age range of 14 to 15 when he passes an examination. And the father, with all astonishing situations, gifted that Rado watch to his son. So we first listened to this particular information. It was very shocking information, and from the researcher's point of view, a very interesting one. That well, we can start our research work from this particular point. That how can the teenagers or the adolescents be influenced with some factors that will really give them to the propensity of choosing a particular luxury brands. We searched different researches at the previous literature, and we found that very limited 3 or 4 papers were available on this particular issue. To the extent that they only discussed certain influencing factors that really have an impact on the choice of luxury brands among the adolescents or teenagers. But this is one situation. Yeah. This is one situation that uncertainty is something like that is not discussed by any author previously. So we have added one extra element into it, that whether uncertainty principle has any effect on the choice of luxury brands by the teenagers in Indian scenario. So this is our highlights. We'll start with the background, the purpose of the study, typical research methodology, then data analysis, the results, the discussion, the limitation, etc., and of course followed by the. So more or less these are the factors available so far we studied based on the factors influencing teenagers' decision making. First of all, my good old friend Luciana from Brazil, she started looking into this particular factor, that peer influence, peer group influence, two are absolutely separate factors. Peer influence individually, peer group influence collectively. Then of course the social motivation and the social materialism, of course it was discussed once again by Luciana in 2017. One more important factor is there in India. especially the social media, particularly Facebook, particularly WhatsApp. Not exactly Twitter is very much famous among the teenagers up to the age of 18. A little bit of Instagram is there, but mainly both Facebook and WhatsApp, these are the major areas of concern that really control the behavior, the attitude of the adolescents, the teenagers in Indian perspective. So these are the factors that they have. One more thing is that, which is discussed by Luciana Gill, 2017, that social consumption motivation is another factor that actually drives the teenagers. In the Brazilian case, and of course, one study was done in India very recently in 2017-18 by Sartaj Chaudhary and Ajay De. They also told that, well, social consumption motivation is one important factor that really drives the teenagers to show off rather. That, well, social consumption motivation, we are purchasing something, so you can show off, you can show it to your peers, you can show it to your classmates. So this is one of the very major, and in India, let me tell you one thing. In India, the luxury consumption, let me tell you, is more prominent. Like if you use a good perfume and you're using, for example, a Louis Vuitton bag, the people will ask you about the luxury, the Louis Vuitton bag. Maybe the Indian luxury starts with wearing a good quality, maybe a superior quality watch. If you wear a Rado watch, if you watch, for example, Rolex watch, then people will look at you that you are using a luxury brand, rather than using a pair of shoes, or maybe you are using a, I know that many of you have the awareness that in India, the typical Indian female dress material is known as sari. Sari is Sabyasachi is the #1 designer in India. You can purchase a sari of $5,000. It's available in India. It's a luxury brand manufactured by or designed by Sabyasachi. So the role of uncertainty is really an important role in decision-making process, and uncertainty is a state of indecisiveness that results from a continued competition among the different alternatives that pop up into the human mind. It forms a major hindrance, obviously, to take the effective decision. And of course, but unfortunate part is that most of the research work about the role of uncertainty in decision-making were done based on the maybe millennials, maybe the people, common people, but not on the teenagers. So this is the situation that we decided, well, let us take up this particular issue in discussing our study with the uncertainty effects on the minds of the adolescents and teenagers in choosing luxury brands. So, to the best of knowledge of ours, so far no research article is available based on the role of uncertainty in the teenager's mind in choosing different products, forget about luxury brands. So from that particular point of view, we believe that it's absolutely a new era, a new situation or new research work that we have started. Maybe it will take time to conclude finally that how far we are successful in really discussing this effect of uncertainty in terms of their attitude towards luxury brand. So we have two purposes. First of all, to find out the factors that affect teenagers' motivation to consume luxury brands, and second one is to examine the role of uncertainty in developing teenagers' attitude to consume luxury brands. So very, very precise two-step purpose. I believe these are the influencing factors. Maybe how to decide the role of a human being in general and the teenager in particular to choose a particular luxury brand. So these are the factors: the peer influence, the social media influence, emotional maturity, because this is one particular age group. Our respondents are from 12 to 18 is the range. So definitely they are not at all emotionally mature, except a few. So we believe that this is one particular point that can really throw some light into it. Self-concept clarity. It's well known that this particular age group from 12 to 18, they don't have a very, very clear self-concept phenomenon within themselves. They are really in the process of developing themselves, in the process of getting the maturity altogether. These three, in fact, in terms of the influencing factor in uncertainty, given by Lipschitz and Strauss, 1997, that inadequate understanding, then incomplete information, and undifferentiated alternatives. It's very, very difficult for teenagers to decide which particular alternative is best suitable for him or her. So we have incorporated this particular factor. Low self-esteem, then hesitancy, indecisiveness, and procrastination. These are the three important factors discussed in different research papers. Then, of course, the social consumption motivation I discussed with you earlier. And finally, the attitude towards the luxury brands. So these are the factors. Quite a complicated model is this to show all the factors, to incorporate all the factors all together. This is our model. Altogether, 18 hypotheses are there. It's a multi-stage model starting with peer influence, then social media influence, emotional maturity, and followed by self-concept clarity, then these three processes of your uncertainty principle, incomplete information, inadequate understanding, and finally the undifferentiated alternatives. In fact, peer influence negatively influences self-concept clarity. Social media negatively influences self-concept clarity. The teenagers do not have the adequate maturity to distinguish between what is a right one, what is a wrong one. And of course, all these things are there. Then incomplete information negatively affects the low self-esteem. Inadequate understanding negatively affects, undifferentiated alternative negatively affects. So all these things are there. And finally, gender. We are interested to know whether gender has any specific role in choice of the luxury brands. 545, we specifically chose the private schools of India because the private schools in India is very, very expensive, unlike the government-sponsored schools. So we found it not very justifiable to choose the government-sponsored schools because the students from the government-sponsored schools, they are not meant for choosing luxury brands rather than the private schools of India. So 54.9% students are female and 45.1% students are male. These 5 cities, the Kolkata, the northeastern part of India, New Delhi, Mumbai, the Bollywood, the western part of India, Bangalore, the IT hub of India, and of course Hyderabad. Hyderabad is going to be the city where the maximum number of Lamborghini cars are running. So you have chosen Hyderabad as, please, something is very interesting. So this initial scale was consisted of 133 items. So we contacted 6 psychologists, out of which 2 are child counselors and 14 counselors. They have reduced the scale from 133 to 62. And it's a 5-point Likert scale, starting from 5 strongly disagree to 1 strongly, 1 is strongly disagree and 5 is strongly agree. For gender, 2 stands for male and 1 stands for female. So the instrument was further pre-tested with 40 students, and of course the other reliability states, etc., etc. So all these things were done. In the data analysis part, we deliberately checked the common method bias because since it's a self-reported study and the respondents are the teenagers, so every possibility is that there's a spurious effect of the result of the responses on the relationship of different latent variables. So we deliberately conducted the common method bias, of course, and second one is the third one, the non-response bias. Since we completed the data collection method in other than Calcutta, other cities in a very hurried situation, the time gap was not very big. So we have chosen to find out the result of the non-response bias, then validity analysis, and finally we have conducted the confirmatory factor analysis. So this is the basic part. Now I will welcome my co-author Ravin to finish the rest of the presentation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Sanyal. As Dr. Sanyal has already described that why we have chosen the teenagers for choosing the luxury brand. Now, as far as the data analysis is concerned, the first of all, the reliability analysis, which I've already described in the previous slide, that as we know that the conduct alpha that should be the 0.7, and in our study it is 0.845. Now, coming back to the common method bias. In the common method bias, Dr. Sanyal has already described that why we have chosen this common method bias. And as you know, that for the common method bias, we have applied the Harman single factor score, and where the acceptable value is 25%, and in our study result, it showed that 14.92%. Now, in the second one, the non-response bias, In the non-responses bias, basically we analyze the non-response bias with the objective of estimating the generalizability of the sample to the populations, for which we have conducted the t-test, and we found that in the result of the t-test that there is no significant difference was found between the early and the late respondents of any construct as far as 95% confidence level. In the third part, that we have gone through the validity analysis. In the validity analysis, we have done the convergent validity as well as the discriminant validity. In the convergent validity, we found that the AVE for all the 13 constructs which you have done, that the result was greater than the approved value of 0.50. That is already shown here in the last slide. Just wait. Now the convergent validity was also examined by the NFI, and where the score was a 9.901, which was established an adequate convergent validity of the model. And the next, we have gone through the discriminant validity, where we found that the AVE for each construct that was greater than the any squared correlations. Again, none of the correlation coefficient was more than 0.50. So this actually shows that the no pair of construct was correlated to assess them as a single construct. Now, we have gone through that, our result, the conformity factor analysis. Basically, that we have done the ACM, structural equation modeling, by using AMOS. In the conformity factor analysis, CFA, that was used to purify our scales for improving the generic measurement properties of the scale, and the structural equation modeling that was testing by using MLE, maximum likelihood estimation, and was found to accomplish a good overall fit. And the goodness of fit indices that is already shown. Next one.
Next one.
Yeah. This is the goodness of fit indices. That is the result. Now, the result which we have found that as far as the gender, they don't have this one. That out of the 18 hypotheses, the 14 hypotheses were accepted, and the 4 hypotheses not accepted. And very interestingly, we found that the gender has not any role to make the attitude to choosing the luxury brand. Now the next one, that indecisiveness. Indecisiveness did not predict social consumption motivation. This is a very interesting result, because we know that the indecisiveness that has a great impact for the dilemma of the teenagers for choosing the luxury brand. Now in the other relationship, we found that uncertainty definitely affected teenagers in different level in forming the social consumption motivations. And the research that is successful in incorporating the uncertainty in terms of the systematic consumption luxury brands, and to determine the systematic relationship between different concepts of uncertainty. Now if we say that they go through the limitations, every study there are some limitations, and our major limitations are the this research basically not incorporated only incorporated the 5 major cities in India. So all these 5 cities basically not reflected the whole different cultures that in India. This research might have taken a different form if we conducted in other countries also. So this research in the future that can be extended by taking that other 2 or 3 more than 2, 3, 4 countries. The maximum care we have taken in the collection, data collection, but since that the respondent are the teenagers, so there is some presence of speculations and doctored answers from the teenagers we did not expect. Now these are our references for our study. And the last but not the least, these are the hypotheses for the CFA result. As we already discussed that out of 18 hypotheses, the 14 hypotheses we have accepted and 4 hypotheses that are not accepted. So, thank you. Thank you.
I have one very quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Listen to your research. Are you taking into consideration, because this is very Asian, like when we talk about teenager purchasing, there's a lot of also not only peer pressure but also family pressures.
Exactly.
And so when you talk about instance of their self-esteem, did you do a study on how much is that is actually based on the pressure from the family side, especially the surveyors that you will reach out to from the.
Not exactly. We did not consider the family pressure or something. So we mainly consider the peer pressure, the peer influence, individual influence, and the peer pressure. See, mainly in India, let me tell you, if you consider the culture of India, in most of the cases, other than that, the big billionaires are there.
Yes.
The common people, maybe to have the capability of purchasing luxury brands to a certain extent, their parents traditionally are not going to pressurize them or influence them to purchase luxury brands.
Okay.
It's mainly coming from the peer pressure, maybe the social media that we have shown over there, peer influence, social consumption motivation to show off that I am using this particular luxury brand or something like that. So culturally or traditionally, probably most of the parents of India, they will not influence their children to purchase any luxury brands. But we are really interested to expand this particular study in the multicultural segment, incorporating different other countries. And we are expanding the research by increasing the number of samples across other cities, the tier 2 and tier 3 cities of India, where even many of the children and the teenagers, they are prone to purchasing luxury brands. So that we are going to increase the sample size, and we are going to expand the research in 5-6 more big cities in India, so that we get some more, what should I say, believable results. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.